All right, good afternoon. This is 5 o'clock, and I call this meeting to order. And the first item is public comments. Do we have any public comments?
No public comment.
No, we don't. Thank you. We are moving on to committee business, but before I do that, for the record, my name is Huang Tran, Chair of the FedRAC. We have committee members, Paul McDaniel here and Jack Dovey on my left. We also have Council President Linda Kochmar, Mr. J.W. Over there, very famous. And we have Councilmember Honda and Lydia. I'm sorry, Lydia, I can't pronounce your last name. I will try. Okay, committee business, item A. Oh, you want to put your motion?
I think Paul has something before we go
Yeah,
to
sorry
item
about
A.
that, yes.
Yeah, no problem. I'd like to make a motion to move item E up to immediately after the minutes, so item A, so.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we will be moving item E to,
B.
to the B. Okay, got it. All right. So let's move to item A.
I move adoption.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the summary minutes of November 2024. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Matter passed 3-0, thank you. Now we are moving on to item E. Oh. Oh, I'm sorry. Lynn, I'm sorry. My mind is not very clear today. Ms. Carter, welcome.
Good evening, Chair Tran and council members of FedRAC. Tanya Carter, your Economic Development Director. I am just going to put up my presentation. And let's see. So the item for discussion this evening is, the policy question is, should the City of Federal Way adopt the 2025 draft federal delegation legislative priorities? So council received the documentation and I believe had an opportunity to review it. So I won't go over in detail the staff memo, but essentially every year the council and various members of the staff attend the National League of Cities in Washington, D.C. in March, and it is an opportunity for us to deepen our relationship with our federal legislative delegation, which consists of our representatives and senators for Washington State and our district. So what we always do is compile a list of priorities to request funding, and that funding is based on overlapping priorities with our federal delegation. So with us tonight by video is from Van Ness Feldman in Washington, D.C., Mr. Luke Sullivan, and he should be on Zoom, and also Mr. Rick Agnew, who everyone also knows from Van Ness Feldman. What I would like to do is to just give a brief summary of the two buckets of priorities that we are proposing to bring to Washington, D.C., and then I will have Mr. Agnew provide a summary of what is happening in D.C. At the moment, which will then lead to a hopeful discussion on or discussion on any questions that anyone else may have based on the priorities. So the two funding recommendations for congressionally directed spending, CDS funding, the two requests that we are making, which is upon advisory from Van Ness Feldman, based on the priorities and based on the administration, what's happening, is one is a mobile incident command vehicle, and the other is relocation of our day center. So those are the two funding recommendations. There are several other items on the memo and on the priorities draft that we provided, which are non-CDS earmark priorities, and they're listed here. I won't read them individually, but essentially what the purpose of listing these is to keep our delegation apprised of some, projects that are overlapping with their priorities that we're not asking for funding, but that we want to keep on their radar to show them that, we really are having some projects and programs that are falling into what their priorities and interests are. So this is more on the relationship building side, and obviously, should there be funding available, that would be great, but that is not what the specific ask is. So at this time, I'd like to pass the podium over to Rick Agnew, and he can provide a summary on what is happening in DC, which will provide a lot of context for this.
Thank you, Tanya, and I appreciate being here, council members. What is happening in DC? A whole lot. It's a remarkable 8 days already, but as it pertains to the city and your priorities and going back to DC for the meetings and the meetings with the delegation, I'll yield in a while to Luke Sullivan, who will explain how we're setting up the meetings in DC. But I've been asked to try to bring clarity to what's going on that you'll see all over the newspapers and the radio and TV about federal funding, a pause, what's going on immediately right now, what is likely to go on through the spring and summer, how does it affect the requests of the city, both the earmarks and the non-earmarked regular funding, grant funding, formula funding, that kind of stuff. But to simplify it, I would say, and when Tanya talked about these priorities, what we've been trying to do the last 3 months or so, I commend your staff for getting ahead of this and really trying to vet all aspects of it, is to set priorities that will match where our delegation is, what they would actually be willing to fund, and balance that against the programs and priorities that you've identified, city staff's identified, council has identified over the years. So when you come up on the cycle of requesting funding, federal funding, there's really two pathways. One is what's called CDS, congressionally directed spending. I don't mean to confuse things, but it also goes by community project funding, and the short term for it is earmarks, congressional earmarks. I want to talk about those for a minute. And for the non-earmarked programs, one of the things we do with the delegation is we try to explain to them if this funding is not quite ready for an earmark, or may not fit your program requirements for an earmark, but will you work with us on obtaining grant funding that's not a congressionally earmarked program? And they always say yes, because they in fact want to see their priorities funded through the agencies. So what's going on immediately right now with the idea of the two CDS requests, earmarks requests that we've identified working with staff, if you just zoom out, it's a really difficult process to go through, because it's really threading a needle. There are about 5 or 6 factors that I'll just outline very quickly that you have to hit each one to be able to get an earmark. First, does Congress even use earmarks? In past years, they haven't always used them. Last 3 years, they have, and they're likely to continue this year, although it hasn't been fully decided. So 1, does Congress use earmarks? 2, which accounts do they open up for earmark? There's only a few. There's a couple of justice accounts, there's economic development accounts that are relevant here, but there are really only a few accounts. Third, does the city project meet the program requirement of that account? Congressman Smith has a great paper that explains you have to meet all these requirements. So 1, does Congress use an earmark? 2, does the account match with your priorities? 3, can you meet the account program requirements? forward as a delegation. Patty Murray, I think last year had 2,000 earmark requests. She sent for the city, for the community center, on to the appropriations committee. So the fourth kind of test or fourth hurdle is, does the project meet enough of the priorities of the member of the delegation that they're willing to use their chip? They can't request that many projects, certainly can't request thousands at a minimum, even though she's the chair of the appropriations committee, or was, maybe 100 projects. And Congressman Smith has a fewer number that he can request. So we got to go through all those hurdles. And what we've been doing in the background is working with the city staff about, okay, these are going to be the priorities for these have historically been the priorities for the delegation and our specific delegation members, and this is how they look for 2025. Then all of that plays out against the background of the new administration has drastically different priorities than the prior administration. President Biden administration was really focused on clean energy and environmental justice, things like that they funded a lot of programs with extra funding. You might remember the Inflation Reduction Act had probably a triple of the normal amount of spending. And this administration, Trump administration, in its first things that the president did in office was issue these executive orders that I'm sure you've heard about, limiting funding for those types of programs and requiring all agencies to put forward to OMB by February 7th whether the funding program complies with the new administration's new priorities. You can imagine how complex that is, and I'm not sure they're going to hit the February 7th deadline, but that's what is being planned. Now, a little bit further confusion is the court just issued a restraining order against that. We'll hear arguments next Monday. But it'll sort through the courts about what can be paused in federal funding programs and what can't be paused. So in any given year, as I articulated, there's maybe 5 hurdles to clear to get an earmark. This year will be different in that this administration is going to have different priorities, and that's just something we'll have to sort out over the next few weeks. It might be figured out by the time council members get to DC in March. If not, you'll be hearing all of this from the delegation and in your League of Cities meetings. Another complication, which is good, I think is good news, is the city received an earmark for the TC3 space, $850,000, led by Congressman Smith. That's still to be received, but it's in the works, and I don't think it'll get tripped up. So you've received one earmark 2 years ago. Last year, there's an earmark that Senator Murray put forward on helping to rehab the community center. That bill is not completed yet, so you don't have that one. I can explain any questions about that if you'd like. So we've gone to the well, if you will, twice successfully with the delegation. We're seeing if the second one clears the hurdle. If it doesn't, then we'll try to clear it this year. But these are the priorities that we recommend, and it's in the memo that Tanya referred to. These are the recommendations we have for the earmarks because they do match our delegation. Our delegation has funded mobile incident command vehicles before. I think for Pierce County most recently has funded projects like the day center relocation. The other projects that are mentioned for non-earmarked, we will still pursue those. We'll still work with the delegation and staff about, can we get funding through regular programs, grants, formula, et cetera. And even like the transportation projects that you all are briefed about a lot of that's with WashDOT. A lot of that goes through formula, goes to the state. So we do apprise, and we will be recommending that the council delegation that meets with the congressional delegation raise those projects with them and just say, here's an update on where we stand with these projects. Just want to clearly mark that those won't be earmark requests, which will have a different pathway. I mean, it's a very different pathway. You have to submit the request, which we've done with staff the last 3 years, and you have to meet all the requirements. So that pathway, those portals aren't even opened yet. We expect them to be opened in maybe mid-February. But again, that means that they have to clear the first two hurdles is, are they even going to use earmarks? And what accounts are they going to open? So we're actively monitoring that. We're actively monitoring the federal funding pause, sorting out what it applies to, what are the legal requirements, and ultimately trying to see about where that funding can go. So I'm happy to yield back, or I guess Luke, I don't know how to access him, but
I was able to turn on my mic. Can you hear me, Rick?
yes. So,
Hello, everybody.
hey,
It's great to speak with all of you again today, and I'm very excited for your trip coming up this spring and all the work we're going to get to do together during this FY26 process. As Rick had been speaking about, the two issues or CDS requests we have proposed to make this year really are building off of what I've had the opportunity to see firsthand on the ground here in Washington. And it's a completely different environment than what we saw when we were doing this previously last year. The president's priorities, as well as the Republicans having a complete control of Congress, is definitely reshaping the map of what's possible for us to get done this year. And as Rick had touched on before, receiving the last two CDS requests have been incredibly successful for the city, and almost a rarity to have two back to back. And so when we look at what we are trying to focus on this year, we've tailored two options that we'd like to submit to members of the delegation based off of their previous requests and matching up what aligns with the city's priorities, as well as the federal delegation's priorities, as well as trying to find areas that Republicans campaigned on and are less likely to drag hurdles in front of. And so the two that have been brought forward to the council today for consideration and review is, after speaking with department heads, is number one, a mobile command unit incident command vehicle for the city. And it's outlined more in detail in the memo that was provided to everybody, why we're recommending this. But to touch on it briefly, all three members of the federal delegation made requests similar to this in fiscal year 2024 and 2025. Public safety and the police force are an area that President Trump, as well as Republicans and Democrats in the House and the Senate, really highlighted during the 2024 campaign. And so we believe targeting this issue area and going forward to a third year of making a request with hopes of getting this, that this would have one of the better chances of some of the priorities that we have listed out due to the interests of the people in power, as well as the delegation. And so when we look at this, and one thing to really keep in mind here too is that it's a bit of an uphill battle this year when we're still kind of, the Trump presidency is new and we have some indication based off of his first term of what to expect. But one thing that I've really seen on the ground is members of Congress who were in power when Trump first came into office. A lot of them had years and years of experience in whether they were senators or congressmen prior to Trump being president, and were able to kind of navigate and push back in certain ways that were different to what Trump was bringing forward at that time. However, over the last about 12 years, or around 12 years that Trump has been in the political spotlight, a decent amount of those members have retired, and about a third of the members of Congress have only been in power during the Trump era, and that's going all the way back to 2016. So they don't really remember or have any experience from a time of what it was like working with previous Republican presidents or Democrat presidents, and only know a time of working under the Biden administration or just Trump, either of the Trump administrations. And so tailoring to those pieces of interest and some of the new members of Congress and making sure that everybody's on the same page is incredibly important as we work forward or to find an area that the city can go and ask for help in. And so that's why we believe that the mobile incident command vehicle would be one of the top priorities to request of the delegation this year. The second one is the Day Center relocation project. This also aligns with community interests of the delegation. Both senators and Congressman Smith made similar requests to address the housing crisis in the state. And this aligns with some of the priorities that they have requested in years past. It's also an area that Republicans have touched on during the campaign and could be a good example of a request that would make sense or gain support from members of your delegation. I think at the moment that covers pretty well the two areas that we're talking about. And when you come in March, we'll be meeting with the senators and congressmen. There's been requests made out to everybody's offices so far. Looks like we will be meeting directly with Congressman Smith and the senators. We're still working out the details there, but are hopeful that we'll be meeting with them as well. And if not, their top staff. And this is we're viewing as a good year to highlight some of the issues, if you turn to the appendix that we've included, of areas that the city hopes to go in the direction of in the new year and in years to come, honestly. And building upon that, the first block in that is starting a relationship with the staff who are the ones that process this. And members of the council that came last year and Tanya and Amy did a phenomenal job of representing the city to the point that we were rewarded another request on top of the one that we'd gotten the previous year. And just with the heightened scrutiny of Republicans being in power and wanting to reduce government spending across the board, although we are hopeful that there's still going to be opportunities to apply for these things, really highlighting where we want the city to go in the future is going to be an opportunity that we need to jump on when you all are here. And that includes highlighting some of the areas that the city wants to expand on in the next 5, 10, 15 years even. And so highlighting the healthcare continuum hub is a great idea and a great example of where the city would like to go as you guys start to build in a different direction than you are currently. And making sure that staff have all of the information, as well as the childcare. I know is an area that's near and dear to a lot of people's hearts, and especially some of our senators, Murray in particular, and working with staff that might be able to help identify other areas of revenue to build on these issue areas and expand in the city, and at least have these areas on top of mind. So when opportunities come in legislation that potentially could be passed over the next 4 years, if there is area to help the city in any kind of money that is appropriated or any kind of legislation, having Federal Way on the top of mind is really what we're aiming to do in March. And I'm excited to be with you all and take you around Washington, as well as meet with these members of our delegation and really make sure that Federal Way is what they're thinking about when opportunities present themselves. I think I can stop there and turn it back to Rick or take any kind of questions.
Thanks, Luke. I just wanted to add one thought. I appreciate the time you've given us tonight. one of the real challenges here, in addition to clearing all the hurdles to get a community project funding or earmark, is syncing up the timelines. Like, each project has to meet the timeline in which the funding would be applicable. So if a project that's a high priority for you in the city is not quite ready, then that's one other reason why we would recommend against seeking a congressionally directed spending, because like the last things, I think you all know this, but the last thing we can do, it hurts to seek money for something and then have to say, we're not going to be ready. Just like in your legislative arena, you have to match up these timelines. So we're matching up the timelines of what window is available for earmark, when these projects and the vision for the city are ready to receive federal funding. And in areas like transportation, that's always a difficult challenge. You know, when can federal money be most useful? And the last thing I'd note is earmarks themselves are just designed to be sort of seed money. They're not designed to be operational, ongoing operational funding and things like that. So that's one of the considerations that the delegation will always say is, hey, you all have heard this before from Senator Murray and Congressman Smith. We don't have that much money that we can hand out. I mean, a couple of $1 million is a lot of money for an earmark. So, and often to build a project, that may not be that much money. So it's kind of, what we wanted to do tonight is kind of framework the considerations that the delegation has, what the new administration is likely to fund, and sync all those timelines up so that you can have effective meeting in March. And the last thing I'd note, both Luke and I have mentioned this, one of the things that is important to the delegation members is, hey, give me an update on what you're doing, childcare as an example, or the health care continuum. Okay, this is where we are. We're likely to come back to you for either an earmark or, you know, working with the existing federal programs. So they are intensely interested in the priorities of the city, and then they try to match it up with their own priorities. So that's why they're still on this list. It's not like, it's not as if we're saying, let's not emphasize these other projects, but they just don't thread the needle for an earmark this year compared to maybe future years, next year or the year after that. Happy to yield the floor.
Chair, I think we're finished with our presentation. If anyone has any questions, Luke, Rick, and myself are available.
Okay, I think Councilmember Paul McDaniel has a question.
First one actually is, excuse me, you guys had mentioned that Congressmember Smith had done a paper on is it possible for you to send a link or provide that information? I like to do the research before I talk sometimes. And then the second one I have is, I appreciate you guys explaining this a little bit deeper. Sometimes this comes out of the side and we don't know what's going on, at least myself. Now that I have a better understanding of what's going on, it sounds like the two targets we're looking at is public safety and then housing with the two items we have on here. Now, the mobile incident command vehicle, I've looked at the wish list, and where do we get the number that's being asked for, since it doesn't quite match up? Where the amounts come from? Where do they come from?
The department heads, so in this case, it would be Chief Huang.
Okay, and then does this number take in consideration maintenance, storage, all that stuff for these kind of vehicles, or is this strictly for the purchase of a vehicle?
I can't comment explicitly on that, but I can certainly follow up.
Yeah, I'd appreciate it, because I know we spent $800,000 on a garage for a vehicle we get every couple months, so it's nice to have these assets, but at the same time, they become a liability real quick if you don't watch it. And I'd also like, knowing that this is the public safety, I'll probably be reviewing the list that he had and then maybe send something in after I've looked at it, but I appreciate you explaining that to me earlier today. The second one is the day center. So the day center relocation, the place that we're looking at doing that in this documentation is a location that we're not even sure will be in existence when this may go through. And the second part is this is not an actual city-owned asset or piece of property, so does it matter that it's not controlled or owned by the city?
I you mean to qualify for funding? I'm not
Yeah.
quite sure what the question is.
Oh, yeah, if you call, well, it's not a problem in my mind, but we're looking at getting funding to try to address the issue. And I'm trying to figure out if there's restrictions on requesting money for, through the earmarks, if it has to be city-owned, does it have to be a city project? Does, what is the criteria that's required for that?
I'll let Rick and Luke respond to that.
Thank you.
The exact criteria have not been set out yet for this year. They should be out within the next 3 weeks. Generally, though, the city ownership for this kind of project is not required. You can, but it should be in the description. One of the things that really matters is, it seems kind of funny, but the 7 or 8 words that Congress uses to identify the earmark, that should say who owns the property, but it's not, generally not a requirement that the city own the property. They can be cooperative agreements with a nonprofit. And then sometimes there are limitations on the nonprofits. But the exact criteria, I want to go back to your first question, Councilmember. We will send you the paper from Adam Smith. It's really quite helpful.
I appreciate
That was
that.
for last year. They're due to put out a new one, which will explain these type of program requirements, and I believe would probably cover whether city ownership of the property is required. We'll probably get that information pretty shortly.
Gotcha. And then just the last question I have is, can funding be used for startups, or can it also be used for continual usage of it? Like, I'm trying to think of the best way to put that. Yeah, capital versus ongoing operation, are they limited on that side of things too?
It depends on the specific account. Very often, like for HUD, EDI, operational funding is not available. It's explicitly not available. Generally, they want to focus on the capital and not ongoing operations. But it depends on the specific account and what Congress wants to, what type of limitation they want to put on that earmark for that year. And it does vary year by year, but I would say generally, what we've seen over the last 5 years is operational funding is disfavored. Maybe somebody squeaks one through once in a while, but generally it won't qualify.
Gotcha. Appreciate it. Look forward to working with you guys.
Councilmember Honda?
Thank you. So let's say we go to DC and we actually get an okay or an agreement that they're willing to fund these 2 items. What is the timeline?
What is the timeline for what? To receive the funding or?
Correct.
So I will let Rick answer that, but it is uncertain, as demonstrated by the funding that we received, the $850,000. We went for it, a year and a half ago. We were awarded it a year ago, and we just last week got the actual application for it. So, 18 months for us to actually even get the application for the funding. So, but I'll let him speak in more detail.
Tanya's exactly right. It is a source of real frustration that it lags so greatly. I mean, it was one of the issues that really frustrated the Biden administration. So what we have to depend on, and this is what comes from Congressman Smith's office and Senator Murray and Senator Cantwell, they depend on the agency to put forward the program requirements for the earmark, put forward the grant process, administer the grant, and the agencies are just really slow. I would think that if we don't know if to pick up on what Tanya said, it's highly uncertain. Will the Trump administration be quicker? They intend to be quicker. I don't know if they will be. But the request for this year, just to do a little sequence here, this would be for the upcoming fiscal year federal fiscal year that begins in October. So the earliest possible date to actually receive the funds, should you get the earmark, would be spring of next year. And the more likely timeframe would be late next year, late in 2026.
Okay. So for the Day Center relocation project, the property is already owned by King County. So we don't need to buy the property of where the Day Center could be relocated. King County already owns it. So the 2.5 million would be to make the pool house or the pool building into a day center. Is that correct?
That's currently, I would say, option A, but of course, there is discussion about an option B, just based on all of the encumbrances on that property. So the goal is to see if it's possible to move the day center from its current location, where there's a lot of disturbance with the neighboring properties and businesses. And so Plan A is the King County Center, but Plan B is, if that isn't working for whatever reason, still looking for a Plan B where that could be.
So will we need to have a Plan B before we go to DC?
No. I think right now it's ongoing, so we won't have to have the whole plan because we already have a Plan A. But based on the timelines, we still have some time to work it through to have a Plan B if Plan A falls through.
Okay, thank you.
Council President?
So, Rick, correct me if I'm wrong, but years ago, and you're right in the fact that when we're going to DC, perhaps the most important people we meet are the people who are staffing the committees where these will go through, these earmarks. And so what Cantwell's staff told me years ago was, it's not a one and done, it's a process. And so they're going through committees, and so what your job and what our job will be is to remind them monthly or so on, this is our project, this is the cost, and this is what we're still, so that it doesn't get dropped somewhere along the way, so that over an 18-month period, we stay top of, well, they call it top of mind, I always say top of the list, but anyway, if I'm incorrect, let me know, but that's the way it was explained to me. Yeah, thank you.
Well, if I can comment on that, that's absolutely correct. We've already been in touch with the relevant staff about this upcoming year, even though they haven't opened the portal. But we stay in touch with them as the year goes forward. We have stayed really close touch with Senator Murray's office on the earmark that's being dragged out with the continuing resolution and the battle over the appropriations bill. But so we stay in close touch with them. And the other thing I would say about the relationship building aspect is we have a vision for the city. You all have articulated the vision, the mayor's articulated a vision, and we want them to see, like in our briefing document, the idea that this is a once-in-a-generation chance to kind of redo downtown and do all the things that you're working on. The TC3 space is even part of that. So we tell them that that's a different vision for Federal Way, and the healthcare continuum is part of that, and actually most of these requests are part of that. So we do stay in active touch with them. You can overdo a contact with congressional staff where they say, hey, I know what you want, but we can't get to this bill yet. But so we try to stop short of that mark of wearing out our welcome. But they're familiar with what we
Yeah,
push for.
you know what might be a good idea, also what Cantwell staff told me was, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And so it would be, I think it'd be a good idea for the healthcare continuum to bring pictures of the hospital, that we have St. Francis Hospital and the surrounding buildings, because that's our hub, that's our healthcare hub. And to bring pictures of, ranked number one, I can't remember what they said they were, but in the new cancer facility there, and it's quite unless they're told or they see that picture, that it's quite a center there.
If I may, Councilmember, it's ironic that you mentioned that because we have talked with staff about this year, let's have really good graphics because staff will focus on it more. And especially if you're talking about reimagining a city, something that captures it is really, it's better than words. So we've already got that in the works. Amy gets credit for that.
Great, good information and great discussion. Thank you, our guests and Tanya. So if we don't have any other questions, may I have the motion, please?
Can I make one comment before?
Yes, go ahead.
So if, and this is just in relation to what I had actually mentioned to Councilmember McDaniel earlier, we have it slated, if you do choose to approve it, to move forward at the second council meeting of the month of February, just in case, in anticipation that there may be some, may have been some changes or things like that. If you do decide that it should move forward as it is, there is also the option to just put it on the council agenda for February 4th, the first council meeting, which you could either choose to put it on consent or you could choose to put it on council business. So I just wanted to bring that up as well, if there is a decision to just let the motion pass.
Great, thank you.
I'm going to read off the ones on here. I move to forward the proposed 2025 federal delegation legislative priorities to council business to the February 18th, 2025 city council meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. This matter passed 3-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we are going back to item B, Attorney General Office Gun Violence Reduction Grant accepted. Commander Murphy? Yes. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, look forward to seeing you in March, Rick.
Go ahead.
Good evening, Council. I am Commander Kerry Murphy with the Investigations Division of our Police Department. And the first policy question I have for you tonight is, should City of Federal Way Police Department accept the Washington State Attorney General's Office Gun Violence Prevention Grant in the amount of $150,000? A little background on the grant. Back in 22-23, the Attorney General's Office sued a local gun store for selling high-capacity handgun magazines. And as a result of that lawsuit, the Attorney General's fined that company $3 million. And the money from that lawsuit has now been created as a grant to prevent gun violence in the state of Washington. We would like to take advantage of that grant to fund the purchase of gun safes to be given out to citizens, as well as a gun buyback event, total amount of $150,000. There was a little change to what I have in front of you today, just today. We want to reallocate the money differently, $100,000 towards gun safes, $50,000 towards the gun buyback program. That's something I put forward to the Attorney General's office. Have not heard back yet, but we have made a couple changes before to how we want to use that money. So I anticipate that there won't be a problem with that. But just a little background on why we want to do the gun safes and the gun buyback programs. And we believe that removing unwanted guns from the street through programs such as the gun buyback program has significant impact to reduce gun violence. We have held gun buyback programs in the past, and they were very successful. The last one was $25,000. That money was gone very quickly. So that's why I bumped it up to $50,000, so we could either have one $25,000 and then a second, or we could do it all in one shot. We haven't decided the logistics of that yet. Like I said, with the $25,000 prior, it went very quickly. And another thing that we didn't include in the buyback program was those high-capacity magazines that brought this money to the state. So that will be included on this one as well. Then as far as the gun safes go, we know that many acts of gun violence occur with people that aren't supposed to have guns, who either steal them from your home or take them from their parents or someone else in the house. We feel that having these gun safes can be a preventative measure to those guns being on the street. The amount, the $100,000, would pay for about 600 gun safes. So it's a very large program, and we would have a lot of different avenues on distributing those safes. We could do them at the farmer's market, we could do them at special events just for that. Set up booths at the community center. We haven't got to the specifics on how we'll do it yet, but we may just have people come to the station as well on certain times and dates, because we don't want all those people at once. But that's a logistic we need to work out. But like I said, it's about close to 600 safes. So it is a significant program that we feel would have a benefit to our community.
Thank you for the information. I just have a quick question regarding the $50,000 for the gun buyback. With that 50,000, how many guns can we buy back?
I don't have the stats from the $25,000, but I know at that time, I believe it was $300 or $350 per handgun. I believe it was $400 for assault type rifles. And I'm going with a similar structure. I can send you that list of what we would pay for each specific type of gun, but I don't have the exact number from the last one.
That's okay, thank you. Paul?
Yeah. I'm going to ask a couple questions, but I'll email them to make it easier for you too.
Okay.
Because some of them was just exactly what he was mentioning. The first one is going to be is kind of exactly what he said, how many firearms were bought last time? And then also the average cost, and what is the firearm requirement? Because I know in the past that sometimes people have been bringing in broken guns, non-usable weapons, but it's a great way to make money for them. So I'm curious to know what the requirements are for the.
There are some rules regarding functionability of the firearm, and I could send that to you.
I appreciate that one. The next one I have is what happens to the firearms? Once
They are destroyed.
they are destroyed?
Yeah.
Okay. Same thing for the magazines?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So they destroy them. And then we mentioned a lot of times statistics of how many families were affected by being stolen and suicides, but I never see any backup other than it's a pretty general one. So if you guys have some actual articles or something you could send me, I'd like to have that information. And the last one is record keeping from the previous buyback. I think that kind of falls in with how many guns and all that stuff. Whatever record keeping we required for this money, I noticed that we required to do that. I'd love to see a copy of what the last
Yeah,
file we
absolutely.
sent in was.
And the requirements of the grant are a little looser than probably the requirements that we had prior.
Okay.
But we would probably go with the more restrictive. One of the things that we do have to do, because it's kind of the draw to a gun buyback program, is we don't ask you who you are, no name, date of birth. Because people that don't want police attention aren't going to bring their guns to us if they could get arrested for having a gun when they're not supposed to have one.
Yeah, understood. I'm looking for more like what kind and how many kind of things to see what is in our.
Yeah, I can definitely provide that from the last one.
And then the last one, the safes. I was at a link program recently at Highline Community College, Highline College nowadays, and they had the safes, and I got one, but it was a small hand gun safe only. Are we looking at handgun safes then only?
What I've looked at so far, and none of this is in stone yet, if the money's there, then I can kind of pick and choose what I want as far as size, things like that. What I'm looking at now is there's a 1 handgun safe and a 2 handgun safe.
Okay.
That I've looked at. That could be expanded though, if we wanted to do some long gun safes as well.
Gotcha.
Which is something we've thought about.
And the last one, like usual, will we be buying from a local business, or is this going to be through a bulk purchase through the?
It'll be probably a bulk purchase. I've looked at one major gun safe company in the region. The only, how do I say this delicately, there's pretty much 2 to 3 places in Federal Way I could buy these guns. One of them
Just paying for
is
the gun
funding
already.
this.
Yes.
So I don't know if that would be appropriate use of the money.
Okay, understood, but if possible, I'd like to keep it local if we can. Thank you.
Susan?
Thank you. Thank you. So, last summer at Town Square Park, there was a program where people could come and get this gun safes, and they were the small ones. So, would it be limited if you do the small ones? Would it be limited to 1 per family, or would you, if they had more than 1 gun in the house, would you give them more?
I'm not sure how to actually address that issue, because originally my proposal to the state was Federal Way residents. They said, no, you can't do that. This is state money. It has to be open to everybody. So I don't know if I can limit it to a family or a residence. It's something I need to look into. It's something I've thought about, but I don't know the answer yet.
Okay, that was one of my questions, was if you had to be a Federal Way resident, so we.
I tried to do that, but they said no on that.
So the lawsuit that is providing this funding for this, because it happened in our city, is that why we're getting the funding?
No, there were, I don't know exactly how many, I think there was 15 different agencies statewide that received some funding. And I can send you a list of those too.
Okay. Thank you very much. Oh, and one more question. Last time you did the gun buyback or whatever you called it, I was here to watch it and the cars were wrapped around that. Are you still going to do it here?
I would rather try to find a bigger location that we can accommodate more people, less traffic, because it was a little
It was
bit
crazy.
chaotic at times.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Chuck?
Yeah, I have a question about the gun safes. And the proposal is to give them away free, and it's up to 600. Wouldn't it, I don't know, gun safe, what's $130? I mean, when I run the math, something like that?
Between 160 and 225
Yeah,
or
so
so,
it's a great deal.
Sure.
Couldn't we charge a little bit so we can get more people to get safes? I mean, and, you know, a $25 processing fee or something so that you get.
I can
more-
definitely ask
Is
the
that
Attorney
something?
General's office, but I don't believe we can do that.
Okay. And then, I'm assuming somebody that comes and get one has to have their firearm registered with the police department?
That isn't a requirement, it just,
So anybody could just,
anybody.
they have to show you that they have a firearm, or?
Nope.
Just walk up and say,
Yep.
I want a gun safe?
I had a lot of those types of things in my original proposal, but the answer I received several times was they can store their jewelry in there if they want. Well, that's not the purpose of the grant, but hopefully the intended purpose is, that's what it's used for.
Okay, thank you.
Or they could be reselling it.
They could.
Okay.
Okay, see no more questions?
I move to forward the acceptance of the Washington State Attorney General's Office Gun Violence Provision Grant to the February 4th, 2025 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. This matter passed 3-0. Thank you. Thank you, Commander. And you have the next one, too.
I do. Are you ready for it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, the policy question on this agenda bill is, should the city of Federal Way enter into an agreement with Pierce Transit to provide police services? As far as financial impacts to the city as a result of accepting the agreement, the revenue for the city for the agreement with Pierce Transit for extra duty would be based on the hours worked and will be credited to the contracted police security budget line, item 01 2100 090 52111 120. There is no cost to the city. So a little bit of background on the prior agreement. We have provided extra duty police security to Pierce Transit since 2018. Pierce Transit has requested Federal Way police officers to work extra duty at various Pierce Transit stations, vehicles, bus routes, bus stops, facilities, and properties in Federal Way through 2026. They agreed to pay an overtime rate of $105 per hour for each officer working, starting January 1, 2025, and ending December 31st, 2026. In 2026, the hourly rate shall increase by the same percentage of pay increase given to the Police Officers Guild. So if that goes up, the amount would go up on the contract as well. The extra duty hours would be 4 hours in the early morning and 3 hours in the late afternoon and 3 hours in the late evening. Officers would be working off duty, so this would not impact police services for the Federal Way Police Department. It would in fact enhance our services since Federal Way officers would be working in uniform at various Pierce Transit sites and facilities. Essentially, if you're not familiar with what the term off-duty means, it's a overtime job by an officer, in this particular case, be paid for by Pierce County, so no cost to the city.
Thank you. Paul?
Two questions on this one. First one is, I assume they'll be driving one of the vehicles then?
Yes.
Okay. And then what is the responsibility? Is it literally just driving around, making a presence known? Or is it they actually have a requirement when they're there?
Depending on where the need is, which is typically the transit center, that would be limited to the transit center. They'd be doing the parking garages, the bus lines, the bus stops, any problems that might come in on a bus. That's typically where they're focused. Occasionally, they could get called to a bus stop or another park and ride.
Now, when they're performing these duties, are they able to be called as backup, or can they call backup, or how does this work? Are they still part of this Federal Police Department at that point, just being paid separately?
Yes, and if they were to get a call, a transit-related call, typically dispatch would send that along with another officer, an on-duty officer, as a backup unit if needed, and vice versa. If one of our on-duty officers needed backup and they were close to the transit center, by all means, they would go to help that officer until things calm down, and then go right back to their post.
Okay. And my last question is on the 105. So they're going to reimburse us $105 per hour. What is the average cost to the city, though? Is that like break-even point? Is that a little more, a little less? I feel like that's kind of not, when you put everything into consideration,
Yeah,
105
I would
doesn't seem
have
like
to.
it's high enough.
Commander Buchanan put this one together, and he was unable to be here tonight, so I could definitely get that answer and send that to you as well. What the 105 represents as far as average officer salaries.
Yeah,
Correct.
because I'm assuming that we actually have administrative responsibilities for putting these guys together, letting know when they're going to do the duties and all. I mean, so there's an additional cost, not just the police officers that's shown, and 105 seems a little low in my mind.
I can definitely,
Don't know
I'll
yet.
find that out for you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yep.
Check.
I have a follow-up question to Councilmember McDaniel. $105, I mean, do we keep any of that? Or is that going all to the officer?
Another question I can definitely answer. I'm not sure what each of our off-duty jobs, depending on, like Wild Waves is one.
Yeah.
They have different rates.
Right.
I can find out what the rate is
I mean-
compared.
And my question is, if we're just breaking even, why are we doing it? Don't we have enough needs in the city?
I agree that if we're just breaking even, I think the benefit that we do provide is a little more presence in the downtown area, because most of it is in the downtown area.
Let me make sure, this is downtown, our transit center?
Yes.
Okay, I thought, when I heard transit centers, I thought it was more than just our downtown.
Oh, no, just within the city of Federal Way. Yes,
I was mistaken, thank you.
you bet.
Susan?
Thank you. At one of the transportation boards that I sit on, we talked about safety a couple weeks ago, public safety at transit centers. And my understanding from the Metro CEO is that they expect the local jurisdiction to respond first, other than the transit police, because there's not enough transit police. So for Pierce Transit, so for our officers who would be at the transit center, they wouldn't just be responding to Pierce Transit issues, it would be all issues at the transit center?
Correct.
Do we have an agreement with Metro to provide off-duty police officers too?
I believe we do, but that's, again, kind of outside my ballpark. I can find out, though, for
Okay.
sure.
If you, could you, and then how much we would pay those officers for that?
You bet.
Okay, thank you very much.
Great, seeing no other questions, may I have the motion, please?
Yes. I move to forward the proposed agreement to the February 4th, 2025 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. This matter passed 3-0. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll have
Commander.
those answers for you in email.
Commander, do you need us to shoot you an email so you can respond, or are you just going to?
That would be great. Just make sure I understand the question.
No problem. We'll do that. Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah.
All right, we are now moving on to item D, authorization to acquire furnishing fixtures and equipment for the Joy Use Operation Facility. EJ, welcome.
Good evening. Let's see if I can share my screen here. Oh, it doesn't work. All right. Hopefully this works. Because my partner in crime that was going to talk about IT is out sick today, so there's no Superman in the back room to come out and help me. So, good evening, Council. I am joined tonight by Director Hutton from the Parks Department. He is here as well with me. But as I mentioned, Thomas is out sick today, so I am covering the IT stuff as well. So tonight we are here to discuss the purchase of furnishings and equipment for the Joint Use Operations and Maintenance Facility. If this advances. So the policy question is, should the council authorize staff to acquire furnishings, fixtures, and equipment for the Joint Use Operations Facility, as Councilmember Tran just mentioned. It's a little bit of background. We are obviously in the middle of construction of the facility. If you've driven by, as an aside to this presentation, the steel for the office building started going up 2 weeks ago, and it's fully up at this point. So they're actually working on putting the roof decking on this week. And if you have a chance to drive by, it's pretty impressive. You can kind of start to see it rising from the street. They're also continuing to work on the walls on the front of the facility, the foundations. It's a little cold to be pouring concrete this week, so it's kind of, that part's a little bit on hold, but that is chugging along. And then on the main operations building, Building B, they've done 2 very large concrete pours. That concrete has cured, and they're setting all the foundation bolts for that this week, and steel is supposed to show up on site the end of this week for that building too. So we're making good progress. Construction has gone fairly smoothly. So we have not had a lot of hiccups. We've, certainly had the little, we need to move this outlet 6 inches this way or that way. That comes with every project, but overall construction has gone very, very smoothly. And our contractor has been very responsive, and I have nothing but good things to say about them today. So back to our regularly scheduled program. As part of the procurement, when we went through design, we looked at a number of things, and there were a number of items that we put into the contract that the city would furnish for the contractor's installation. The majority of what you're going to see tonight is that category. And the reason we do that is we can buy stuff, be it off state contract, be it off federal contracts, or, like 1GPA, which is a hybrid state and federal contract, as well as the school district's contract. Basically for cheaper than the contractor can. Additionally, these are some large ticket items, so we don't pay the typical 21 to 29% markup of the contractor for equipment, and it preserves the continuity of warranty to the city. So there's some strategic advantages to why we have selected the equipment we are providing to the contractor. But that all being said, it's the equipment that the contractor is expecting for us to have show up on site so they can actually install it. So that's kind of what you're going to see. There are a handful of long lead items in here that are needed to actually make the facility operational that have 12 to 18 month lead times. So that is the kind of second category of stuff that we have included here, because we obviously need them to be able to get the facility operational, so we need to get them ordered. So continuing through the background, this is all equipment that was included in the budget that previously was approved by council. So there's nothing new here tonight. This is, we received budgetary authority, and then in accordance with the purchasing and contract manual and our requirements and state requirements, most of these expenditures are well over $20,000. So we are back before you to request authority to actually go buy the physical item at this point. As the project continues, there is a number of things that we will be back before council to request additional approvals for that will be against the remainder of that FF&E budget. In summary, and then we're going to dig into the items a little bit, the overall budget is the first line of what was included for FF&E in the approved budget and bond measure was $2.2 million. What you're going to see tonight is authorization request of a little over $1.1 million. So a little bit over 50% round numbers. And then the remaining budget, like I said, it is allocated. So that is items that mainly furniture, but it does include office storage, janitorial equipment, that sort of thing. Everything that I'm going to show you is inside the original budget. So there's nothing that is projected to go over budget on this line or in the project holistically. To the contrary, we actually have a little bit of savings going into this line. So a couple of things I'm just going to point out real fast and then dive into the equipment. This list is kind of key and significant equipment. That's what I mentioned. This is equipment that we are required to provide to the contractor contractually. As we go through the next couple of slides, it is not an exhaustive list of required accessories. So things like patch cables for IT, we need them. They are included in the numbers you're going to see, but we did not call out, we need 12 patch cables to that effect. And there's a number of little things like that. Those things are within the budget authority in the city's contract and purchasing manual. So they're here for clarity, but they're not called out in specifics. So the equipment, starting through this, and I'll try and move through this. I'm happy to dig into any of this stuff in more detail, but I also want to be respectful of council's time and not belabor points with you. So for building A, it is namely equipment around the boot up room. It includes boot dryers and cabinetry that we are purchasing. The contractor then, this is all hardwired equipment. They have to go install it, bolted to walls, hardwire it up. The IT infrastructure, this will be one of the biggest items that you see tonight. So the IT infrastructure, the way our Avigilon system works citywide in facilities is we provide that in-house. So the contractor is responsible for providing pathway and cabling. We as a city, then as part of the contract, are buying all of the cameras, and we are actually installing the cameras as well. So that is in that number. That's through our state contract. It also includes security infrastructure. That is effectively the server equipment. And then lastly, in the IT thing, it includes the Wi-Fi network, so it works the same as this building works. So that includes the actual area access points as well as the backbone equipment that goes in the server rack. And then, as I mentioned, things like patch cables are in this category in that $350,000, but obviously not called out here. For site equipment, it includes the brine equipment. That is one of the 12,000-gallon tanks that we have to provide to the contractor in the picture on the right. And it also includes the loading ramp for trucks. For site racking and storage, we're into some of the smaller number items, but these are still significant expenditures. So it includes cantilever rack storage, includes small rack storage, similar to what you see on the right. Includes small fit out. This is equipment signage that, handicap signs, et cetera. It includes operational marking, so that's actually paint on the pavement. It includes things like fittings and connections, so that is namely bolts and signposts and bollards and that sort of things. Next line down is the air filtration for the welding shop. You're going to see the air filtration for the carpentry shop in a second. That's another unit that the contractor has to hardwire in. Includes the welding machines. So this is not a full buyout of the welding shop. This is the welding machines that are hardwired in by the contractor. It includes the shop storage, which is fabrication tables and racks that they install, the air filtration for the carpentry shop, you see in the bottom right corner. And then the woodworking machines kind of parallel to the steel, that they get hardwired, fabrication equipment for the carpentry shop. And then the other big one, it includes, and this is one of those long lead items, the storage cabinets. You're going to see this on here a couple of times. While those cabinets are portable, they are a year to 15-month lead time to get them in bulk at federal pricing, which we very much want to take advantage of so we can buy all of them, as well as security partitions. Workbenches and more cabinets, and then in the fleet area, there's two lifts. There's the lift for changing, namely tires on small vehicles and police cars, which is that vehicle scissor lift, and then the parallelogram lift, which is the heavy-duty lift to lift the larger trucks. All of that is, and you can see that has a small dump truck, but a full-size dump truck with a full-size plow. They sent that to us. I actually asked them if they had a different picture that would be a little more representative of ours. We don't run with those wing plows on the side, but that's what they had. And, so that lift will lift 80,000 pounds. So it'll lift one of our trucks full with salt in the winter, which is something that we do not have the capability of doing right now. So if a chain breaks on the bottom of that truck, we actually don't have a way to repair it right now. It just stays down for the rest of an event until we can basically have a heavy contractor come out and fix it. So this will actually give us the ability to repair plows during events and get them back out on the road, which is something I've fought for years, of like just having this ability in house. So this is one of those things that will be everything will magically work better during snow and ice events, and no one will know why. And I'm happy to keep it that way, but you're seeing the reason why on your screen. So fleet storage, more cabinets. And then fleet equipment, this is the other long lead items. So oil changing equipment, of all things. This is stuff that it's 120 volt, plugs into a regular outlet, has a 15-month lead time. So, and it's not anything special. It's stuff that you go get your oil changed in your car. It's the same equipment. It's just really, really long lead times. So getting that moving, and then parts washer and a vehicle vacuum. So the remaining authorizations, as I mentioned at the beginning, it's office furniture is the big one, and then there's a number of small things and short lead times, so shelf racks, consumables, janitorial. We are, as I mentioned at the beginning, the stuff that you've seen tonight is actually a little bit under the budget that we had shared originally with this as far as the FF&E budget and specifics. We're about 10% under where we thought we would be, so we're actually ahead of the game. So I don't have any concerns with the remainder of the items fitting within the remaining budget. So option one is to authorize staff to acquire the FF&E equipment for the Joint Use Operations Facility. Option two is do not authorize staff to acquire and provide direction. The mayor's recommendation is to forward option one to the February, not January, 4th council meeting for consent approval. And I am happy to answer questions or dig into any of these items further if you would like.
Thank you, EJ. Paul?
Yeah, just a couple quick ones. First one is just to verify one more time, this is all part of the budget, cost within the budget, everything. Is there any other big ticket items that you can think of other than the large furniture purchases that will need to be done for this?
No, so right now, I mean, like I said, that total budget is 2.2 million. Right now, we're tracking to be about 2.05 to 2.1 within that budget line. So, I mean, furniture is the majority of the rest of that, and then there's a lot of little stuff, trash cans and we take janitorial supplies for granted, but frankly, mops and brooms add up really, really fast. So that janitorial is one of the big remaining ones. But no, this is almost all of the long lead items, and then it is everything we need to provide to the contractor. So there's not much on the list left to buy.
After that, okay, gotcha. And the second part is security. Do we currently still have a security company who's monitoring everything we have there?
We have enhanced the video monitoring contract, yes, and the contractor has on-site security as well. We do not have an on-site security guard there 24 hours a day at this point.
I know at one point we contracted for one. Is that contract up then?
Correct, that contract ended.
When did it end, do you know?
I don't off the top of my head. We didn't manage that.
Who would I check with that then?
Do you know, John?
I can check and get you an answer on when, you're speaking about the live security that we had, an
Yeah, because we
actual
were
human,
paying a chunk of money for that. I know we
Yeah, we
used
were-
ARPA money for it.
spending quite a bit. I'll find out when we ceased that operation. It's kind of when we started moving in and out and turning it over to the contractor is what memory serves.
And then they
But I
have
can
a-
find out and email you tomorrow.
Gotcha. And then they actually have an on-staff security comes by for them?
So they have security that comes through multiple times a night. They are not parked there from dusk to dawn. But yes, they have security that, they are contracting with someone to come through. I don't know the exact number of times, they haven't shared that, but they drive the site periodically at night.
And the last question is, the cameras that we're putting in there, are they going to be tied into the city's network? And then also, will they be tied into the police for being able to view? Or what is the future looking forward for security for that?
So yes and yes. So they are tied into the Safe City camera system, which is what the cameras at the current maintenance yard are. They are also tied into the security system that we have now through Avigilon, which is I'm going to call it AI-based, and that's probably not 100% accurate. But the call center in Bellingham that monitors it in real time and then yells at people in the yard and dispatches police officers, they're tied into that system as well. So that contract is part of this. And that contract is per number of triggers, not per number of cameras. So there shouldn't be a change as it relates to that contract with this.
And so I take it the contract we currently have is just rolling over to the new facility then?
Yeah, that contract actually covers multiple facilities at this point. This is one of them. But yes, it will include the new facility.
Okay, thank you.
Susan?
Thank you. Excuse me. When you guys move over to the new building, are you taking any existing furniture and supplies with you?
Supplies, yes. Equipment, yes. Furniture, I think the jury's still out on. We have the hand-me-downs of the hand-me-downs of City Hall. So most of the stuff is, no joke, held together with duct tape. So most of it I don't believe is going to get moved. I don't think it's in a condition that it would survive a move, frankly. Certainly, we have like folding tables and folding chairs that we use periodically. All of that stuff, yes, we will reuse. But the actual like office desks and stuff, probably not. They're probably going to be disposed of.
Okay, thank you.
So EJ, I have a question regarding the office furniture. When are we going to buy those? Would the price continue to go up? Shouldn't we go ahead and place an order now?
We should. So we are working on that. I am hopeful either myself or Deputy Parks Director Gerwin will be in front of you in February. We were trying to actually get that into this, and we ran into some snags with getting some pricing from a couple of contractors, or vendors, excuse me. But our goal was actually to bring that as part of this package tonight, and it didn't quite happen. So we most likely we'll be right back here in February for that. But yes, there's a lead time with that as well. So we want to get that ordered as well and get that, to your point, get that price locked in.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, see no questions? Good.
All right. I move to forward option 1 to the February 4th, 2025 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. This matter passed 3-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
EJ. We are now moving on to item F, AP voucher, November 16, 2024 to December 15, 2024, and payroll voucher from November 1st, 2024 through November 30th, 2024. Director Groom, I upgraded your title today.
I always liked you, yeah.
Truth comes out.
And hot dog. Thank you. Good evening. We're now on the home stretch, I feel. We're on to our finance items. In your packet, of course, you have got the complete voucher registers. We did not meet in December, so there are two sets. There's two agenda items here. The disbursements for November. You've got the complete listing in your packet, and we have started working on processing council members. November we did it in advance, so we've answered those questions. As always, we show the current month. We pick up which categories exceeded 100,000, so that we can all see what the material pieces were. And the last few months, the biggest pieces of our voucher register has been construction projects. When we compare to prior months, it's just a matter of how much was the construction this month. So the November disbursements were quite a bit more than they were in October and September, and it was because of the construction spending. Payroll vouchers, we have a very typical disbursement in November because there was nothing unusual, and it did not have quarterly or payroll taxes. Just to mention the construction spending, we started with a debt issue of $53 million, and I did a little table, I thought I'd make this a little bit more informative. We started with $53 million, and you can see how much we spent. That initial $6.7 million, that was the land acquisition. And then in September, EJ and his team started work in earnest. This represents the flow of invoices to us. So you can see how much the checks on this particular, just on the maintenance and operations facility project, so that the unspent is down to 42 million at the end of December. I realize this agenda item is just for November. However, as you notice, the city received 53 million, and so we are monitoring how much the unspent cash is. We double check with our Public Works Department, make sure that our totals match their totals. And the interesting thing is that because investment rates have not dropped like we anticipated that we thought they would, we're earning interest on this money that's unspent. We're getting about $200,000 a month in interest that can only be spent on this project. So it's restricted money, it's segregated money. While we report that the total construction spending was quite a bit, this is the amount of the maintenance shop. Because, of course, this is over and above what we normally spend on public works projects normally. I just thought that was interesting and worth sharing. With that, you can go ahead and ask me any more questions on November. If you like, I can roll through the December numbers as well.
Thank you, Steve. Paul?
Just my only question is, what is the investment payout and what is the bond rate? Like, what, are we within like a half a point between the two? 'Cause I think at one point, when investment was actually higher than the actual bond was, wasn't it?
The interest rate that we're paying on the 53 million,
Yeah.
I've started working on our slides for our retreat, and I had that number, and I was working on it, and I can't think of it off the top of my head.
Okay.
I can email it to you, and I will also bring it to you when we do our council retreat.
That works for me then. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Susan?
Thank you. When do we make our first payment on the bond for the maintenance yard?
I believe we have a substantial payment in 2025. It's largely interest, of course, and that's in my slides too, and I don't have that off the top of my head. I can send it to you.
Could you, substantial is kind of a scary word during these times.
And it's exactly what we signed up for. We're executing it as planned, no surprises. I'm happy to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Keep it clean. Okay, see no other questions? Motion, please.
Yeah, I move to forward the vouchers to the February 4th, 2024 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. This matter passed 3-0. Thank you. We are now moving on to item G, AP voucher, December 17, 2024 through January 15, 2025, and payroll voucher from December 1st, 2024 to December 31st, 2024.
This is very much like the previous one. Largely, the bulk of one of the big pieces of the disbursements in December was construction projects. However, if you drop down about 4 lines, you'll see insurance premiums, $3 million. That is that's our payment for the 2025 insurance. We pay all of it at the beginning of the year. We pay 100% of the premiums right off at the very beginning, and we make sure that we are not late, so we don't incur a late fee. So between construction spending and insurance premiums. Now, there were several other categories that did cross my $100,000 threshold to mention. Those are all in the disbursement in the voucher report. And then our December payroll vouchers, of course, had quarterly payroll taxes, so that was a touch higher than they were in November and October. We have gotten about half of council members Honda's questions, and I promise that we will get the rest of them. We're a bit behind this month, and we'll own up to it, but I can answer any questions that you have, and I can follow up on anything that I don't have.
I do have a question regarding the insurance payment. If we pay all at once, is there any incentive for doing so?
Avoiding a penalty for late payment, I think, is the only one. I don't think I have a better answer than that.
Shouldn't we, I mean, if they allow us to make a payment, for example, we can pay them monthly and then use that money to invest?
I am absolutely certain we use every competitive thing that we can think of, but I don't have the answer to that on myself.
Jack?
Is that all insurance or just L&I and workman's comp?
No, that is, I believe that's our liability insurance. The workers' comp, we pay monthly, and things that are payroll related, we pay monthly.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Director Grimm. I think, so the insurance premiums are lines of insurance that you're paying for different, so one of it goes to AWC. Do we have like an umbrella insurance policy? Do we have other lines of insurance? And I'm wondering if you could give us a side report that tell us what our insurance premiums are.
Actually, insurance is my department. If
Oh.
you want to ask me some questions, I'm happy to answer it. So this $3 million number is not, it's more than just liability insurance, because liability insurance is about $1 million. So this has to include some medical. We're self-funded for medical insurance as well. So not sure what the breakdown is there, but this absolutely includes the entire year for liability insurance, and that also includes our inland marine policies, all of our automobile policies that are through WCIA, as well as tort claim liability coverage. And then I'm not sure what the medical is, so we'd have to look at that.
Could you send us a side report that would kind of break that out so we know?
Yes, I'm happy to do that.
Thanks. And it would be interesting to see, where we are in relation to previous years.
I know that. I mean, as far as liability goes, this year's it increased about 40%.
Is that
So-
because, okay, so we're in WCIA, which
Yes,
is
it
the-
was twofold. One, the entire pool went up about 20%, just because the insurance market in Washington State is hardening. Insurance companies do not like to do business with Washington State municipalities. Our tort exposure, because of the laws of this state, as well as kind of the anti-police stance and just juries in general in this state, have made it very expensive to operate a police department in this state. So it went up across the board for general tort liability. In addition to that, we're one of the larger entities in the pool, and we had some significant losses, $1 million claims.
in the pool.
Yes, so I've looked at our claims. We've actually taken more out of the pool than we've put into it for the years we've been in the pool. So that's why our insurance rates were increased the maximum amount. So we're watching it very closely. It's
Okay.
mostly the police department.
Okay, well, just send us a side report on, how they're broken out.
Happy to do
Thanks.
I have a question on that. Ryan, can they remove us from the pool if we use the resources more than other jurisdictions?
They could decline to renew. I've never heard of them doing that.
Okay.
So generally, I think they would price us out, is what they would do. But they have not done that. I think they like us, having us in the pool, and it's good to have large entities in the pool. It looks good, it helps attract newer, smaller places, smaller cities.
So what cities are in the pool?
It's a long list.
Okay.
It's about 300.
Okay.
But we're in the top class of the largest cities. I think there's about 4 cities that are our size. But I can send you the list. It's also online. If you just Google WCIA, they have a list of all of their clients. But I'll send that as well with the breakdown of insurance.
Thank you.
Don't they have a rebate program too? If you do better than anticipated, or you could say, I'm going to hit this target, and then you get a kind of a rebate. Don't they still have that?
I don't believe so. Not WCIA does not do that. They have other programs where they fund things in different ways, incentives to do better, training, and they also pay for a lot of training. But no, there's not just an automatic, you get money back if you save money.
Thank you.
All right, see no other questions.
I move to forward the vouchers to the February 4th, 2025 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
With a motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. This matter passed 3-0. And now we are moving to the last item, monthly financial report, November 2024.
Thank you. We are at a funny part of the year. We did not meet in December. If we had, we would have given you this November report. So The report in your packet is our finance department's full month-end close for November. The reason we don't have December, and you would think it's January 28th, why don't we have a December report? We're past about the 15th of the month. And the answer is, when we close December, we take 2 months. At the end of February, we wait for all of the invoices to come in. We wait for the revenues that come in on a 2-month lag, and then we prepare our audited financial statements. So we don't attempt to do a December preliminary report. However, my slides, I will give you up to the minute the revenues that I'm aware of. And then when we come next month, I'll have some January numbers, but one little dot doesn't give you the trend line we're looking for. So we're in that funny part of the year. However, I am committed to giving you what I have and try to make it as relevant as I can. So of course, I'm going to give you our revenues and our investments. We're always accountable to that. I've also fielded some questions. What do we know now about our tax increment area? What's happening with finance staff? And how about an update on that financial system replacement? So I can give you this here, this is our sales tax. This gives us actually one more month than what I had in our November close. And what we're seeing is that we are still tracking unfavorably to budget and about 6% under prior year, which I continue to find mystifying because inflation for the past 19 months has been between 2.5% and 4%. So if our volume of all of our retail activity in our city was exactly the same, inflation would bump it up 2.5% to 4%. Instead, we're seeing down 6%. I show that dotted red line because that's the target that the Federal Reserve is working to use their tools on the economy to manage inflation. And in the last 3 months, we actually saw inflation go up a little bit. Our utility tax revenue has consistently been favorable both to budget and for compared to prior year. And I know in the 2025-26 budget, I think we budgeted that a little bit cautiously and conservatively. So I think next year this will be one of our positive variances as well. Permit fees. In the month of November, permit fees were down compared to prior month. For the 11 months that we have, the cumulative number for our dollar amount for our permit fees, it's significantly under the prior year. And that's because the prior year was just an outstanding year, an unusually high year. It actually continues to come in favorable to budget. Real estate excise tax. This has been one of our sore spots, and we know it, and we talked about it a lot during the budget. The amount that we received in November was less than prior year, which was less than the year before that, which was less than the year before that. So we have not seen it turn a corner. And the question, two questions are, is when's it going to turn? When are rates going to come down so that mortgage rates start changing? And then, how do we manage the city knowing this information? And the one manageable lever that we have that we can pull is we can defer and delay projects. This is a restricted revenue, we all know, and it's EJ's transportation projects, capital projects. One surprising little bright spot is lodging tax. Now, this is an indicator that shows for the whole entire year, we're on a 2-month lag on this one, and the scale is so much smaller. It's $23,000 favorable to budget. It's $29,000 higher than it was the prior year. But I'm just my heart is so warmed to see that there's a sector that's doing well in our city. Back during the pandemic, the hospitality sector was hit so hard, and we kind of triumphed in 2022 that we said, oh, we came back to where we were before the pandemic. Well, look what we've done since. It's really quite remarkable. I just wish the dollars were larger. And of course, this is restricted lodging tax. It's only available to spend on the things that go through the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. property tax revenue, I've got the final number. We almost always get exactly what we levy. There's a few differences in timing, and in fact, there's 55,000 that we came in slightly unfavorable to budget, less than 0.5%. However, a full 2% over prior year, and it's got that funny shape because we get most of our property tax in two tranches in April and May, and then in October and November. Now, related to property tax, somebody asked a question, I think it was Councilmember Cephas, that said, well, what about the tax increment area? So I went back to the records that we had got when we were doing our budget. And on this worksheet that has got more numbers, it's just a wall of numbers, I realize, but I put little red circles. The final number that the King County tax assessor settled on to levy within the tax increment area was $21,800. Now, how much will we really receive? We're going to receive it on those two a whole bunch of it I expect in April and May, and a whole bunch of it in October, November. So I will report to you as it comes in. It's a very small number. However, it's in the neighborhood of what the consultant had said our first year would be. So this is something for us to monitor and track, and I will continue to report on it. I thought I could, I'm happy to answer questions that I can find the answer to. We got our final 12 months of interest revenue. Our final 12-month year-to-date revenue was 3.7, I'd like to round it to 3.8, which was both favorable to budget and favorable over prior year. And as we make every single purchase, we made one this morning and we locked it in for 5 years. So every month we have one piece of our investment portfolio that matures and we lock it in, and rates have not dropped like we expected them to. Now, the Federal Reserve, as we all know, recently did 3 rate cuts. They did one in September, one in November, one in December, and I've got them circled there. Their target rate was 5.5%. They made a 0.5% drop and then a couple of 0.25% drops. Now, that was in September, so that means for the first 9 months of 2024, the rate didn't change. It was level, and then it dropped those 3 times. Well, when I look back at the 12 months of 2024 and I look at the purchases we made, where was the 5-year Treasury at the moment we purchased a 5-year investment? It's a bit of a roller coaster. And a little bit of interest, the point in time that we did our $53 million debt issue just happened to come at a really nice time when rates dropped, and we captured that. Point being that no matter what the Federal Reserve is doing, the market is a little bit unpredictable. And we just, every month when we get a maturity, we do our investment. We capture the best rate that we can. We always buy non-callable, so we know that we've got that rate for 5 years. In the months of November and December, we had 3 maturities, a total of $3 million, and a couple of them were maturities that when we had bought them were under 1%. We did $3 million in purchases, and we got, oh, I'm sorry, that previous graph, it shows that everything that we were able to buy last year was pretty, kind of in a stable band. It was above 4%. It was between 4 and 4.5%, which is exactly what we're still seeing today, even this morning when we did our monthly investment this month on the one that matured. Lastly, oh no, this is not last. This is next to last. What's happening with the finance department? Chase left, and we did a not just a statewide, we did a national recruitment. We had candidates from California, candidates from Arizona. We found other candidates that had almost the same qualifications as our own senior analyst, but he has 5 years of experience here. He has got a master's in accounting. His specialty was forensic accounting, and he's active in the leadership of the local regional Puget Sound finance officers. We meet here once a month. We do trainings. And he's in that teaching rotation. I'm eager to have him. I was going to make him come tonight, and he had a family obligation. He will be at all the future FedRec meetings. Now, replacing Tuich we hired Christine. Did everybody meet Christine? She had a big line earlier. She said, no public comment. We stole Christine, we stole Chris from, she moved here from Mississippi, but technically, her most applicable experience was her several years of working for the city of Renton. She supported the finance and the IT department, and so we are delighted. So again, we did some extensive recruiting. I still have to backfill David's position. We'll keep you posted on that. This is my last slide. What's happening with our financial software? Thomas and I, both of our departments, IT and finance, we are moving down our checklist. We retained a consultant several months ago. They put together a terrific process. We did internal discovery sessions involving every department in City Hall. We issued the RFP. We scored 6 recipients. And our consultant put together two-day demos. So we had 2 very full 8-hour days, and every hour they had very specific sections of their software that they were showing us. Our next steps is to take what feedback we got. We had a staff from most of our departments here at City Hall in those demonstrations. Our next steps is to work on follow-up questions, take a hard look at the bids. We have been talking to other cities. There are, I want to say, about 15 other cities in the state of Washington that are in the same boat as us. There's only one that I have found that has fully implemented when they already did their software replacement. But we're able to, I mean, the best way to learn is from other people's, I don't want to say mistakes, but they're from their experience. And we're finding that it's very helpful. We have yet to do the final selection, do the contract approval, and that will give us our timeline. That's where we're at. That's everything I could possibly think of to give you the financial update during this time. It's going to be a few months before we bring you the audited financials. My staff will really start working with auditors in March, and we expect the audit to finish in May. That's everything I have for you.
Thank you, Steve. Paul, and then Jack.
You can let Jack go first.
Jack?
I just guess I want to verify my math. Were we 5 million upside down then on revenues?
Minimum
When we
3.
had 2.207 and 2.8 million and
If you look at only sales tax
which are our
and
biggest parts of it.
REIT, yeah, but I think we had positives on utility tax, we had positives on permits, we had positives on interest.
Well, you had a good positive on interest.
Yeah.
But, lodging tax, a rounding error.
Right,
In our budget.
right. And our last opportunity where we took a real hard look at the last opportunity to do a budget amendment to finish out 2024, we were forecasting jail cost and, a few other things, and we looked at our revenue, and that was when we greenlighted what we were able to, and that was it.
But I guess my question is, we got one more month, we're gonna close it out, and I don't see, well, maybe the people bought a lot of things at Christmas, I don't know. But this impact, is it gonna have much of an impact on what we did for our 2-year budget? Because, we're gonna have to look at all this again
Yeah.
sometime in
Yeah.
into the first quarter, I'm
And the
assuming.
reason I bring to you all of these revenues every month is because we're looking at them every single month, and we're saying, okay, if we have to cut back because of sales tax, if we have to cut back on REIT, how are we going to do that? And we look at that every single month. So we
Right.
have to have a plan A on expecting, what are we going to do?
Right, but I guess, and all businesses and cities have to do that, but if we're upside down, a total of 5 million, when you put it together, maybe my math is wrong, for the first 11 months, the 12th month is probably not gonna be a big uptick.
Yeah,
We're
and,
gonna have to look at that in comparison to what we just did for the 2024, for our next 2 years.
Sure.
Very quickly, because that
Sure.
could continue, because we're taking some from reserves to make up that budget we just passed.
REIT is a separate restricted fund, and that's the one
I
where we
got
can,
it.
that's the one where we can defer projects. So I think
Yeah.
that one we've got segregated. The
Okay.
others I think are all general fund.
Yeah.
I think you're
Okay.
absolutely right.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm gonna piggyback on that one, and actually, I'm gonna start the early conversation for the retreat, because the number one thing we'll talk about is finance, and If you don't mind going back to sales tax on your display, I'll start with my comments. When we did the recent budget, we started with a $3 million deficit that we shored up with increased revenues of interest, lodging tax. We also did defer spending on vehicles. We used ARPA savings, and then we did fund balance transfers or carryovers to get the $3 million. So we originally started upside down by $3 million. Of the revenue stream, we have investments of $4.2 million. So we went from, I believe you said, say $50,000 to maybe $80,000 of investment to $4.2 million worth of revenue. And we've been using that to bake into the books. Now, probably the smartest thing that I've seen the city do in a long time. I mean, it was a great move, but that's limited for how many more years do we have that?
5 years is what I lock in every single month, so I think that smooths us. But
Doesn't smooth expenses.
I think we all agree it's going to go down. It's going to go down gradually, and it won't be a surprise.
Yeah, so if you take the 4 plus the 3, we're at 7. And if you add $1 million for sales tax and 2 for REIT, that's another 3. That's $10 million that I think really needs to be discussed and determined on how that will affect the city.
Sure.
So,
I noticed that your idea of a good time at a council retreat is to start with finance.
Oh, man, it's a great place to start with the money. So now, if I understood you correctly, the 5% unfavorable, you would have estimated that to be at least a 1% just because of 2.5 to 4% inflation?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
It shows a 5% unfavorable.
Oh, yes.
You would have expected that just with the inflation alone of being between, say, 3% for easy number, 3%, it would have been less of a hit, because if we stayed the same, we would still have a 3% increase.
And not to budget, but compared to prior year. Now, here they're almost the same, but when we're comparing to prior year, so is inflation. So inflation's saying it's 3% over prior year, and we're saying our sales tax is under prior year by 6.
So that's roughly 9 if you just did 3.
Which means that our volume has decreased.
Yeah, okay. And then I've also noticed that the sales that we have in some of our most popular place, 348th, is starting to continue to decline over year. So, I'm just bringing some stuff up that I will be bringing up in retreat for you guys. And then I think the only other question I have is, when you say that we expenditures have been trending favorably, primarily due to filling of police department vacancy positions and timing of expenditures for ARPA spending, when you say police department vacancies, are you saying that because we don't have the additional expense of the police officers, that's one of the areas that we're not just spending enough, as much of, or the savings area?
It's a savings if we have vacancies. Now, we've budgeted them to be full. We want them to be full. We planned for them in our budget to be full. But when we have a vacancy, it's an expense savings.
Okay. And then...
And it's not just police, but they're the biggest piece. Yeah.
Gotcha. And does the expense savings counter the overtime pay?
Yes, it does. Yes,
Okay.
it does. We look at overtime. We have a report that finance does for PD, and we're looking at it because they're bringing police in early on a shift. If there's something's going on, they're keeping them late. They are doing special emphasis. So the police is very intentional about what they're doing and how much they're spending on it, and we compare year over year, and we look at and we compare it to savings.
Do you happen to know what what that savings is by not having those positions filled?
Not off the top of my head, but I will follow that one up.
Because we're sitting at roughly $2 million in overtime, if I'm reading this correctly.
The delta between overtime and savings, yeah.
Yes. So I'd be curious to know what we're actually saving. If we have enough police officers to cover it with the overtime, I'm curious to know what the actual number would be where that delta hits.
Sure.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. J.W. and then Susan.
Yeah, with the sales tax, I mean, we have the, a little bit broken down by areas of the city. Is there any way to, I know that you're limited on how you can break it down also, but are there any way to figure what sectors, not just geographical locations, but what sectors of the economy of sales are? Is it, is it restaurant, is it the big box stores?
There probably is, and I'm gonna claim that I'm shorthanded the last couple of months, and I think it's a good idea, and I haven't done it. I haven't found a way to get into that data. Yeah.
Because it
I
seems
think-
like
I think there
if we could
is.
see what sectors it is, it seems like that it would be good information for us and for Tanya and for
Yes,
everybody
and-
else to see what can be done to,
Right, and we drive around our town. We see the traffic, we see the parking lots, we see how tough it is to get into the Costco and Home Depot, you know. I see business happening, and I am a little mystified. I don't see, we see a handful of store closures, the drugstore over by Chick-fil-A, you know. We know our town, and it just doesn't, it just seems like everything's kind of normal. So I think it's a global, regional, national. Some of my colleagues at other cities think it was political apprehension about what was going to happen with the election, or what's happening with the interest rates, you know, watching credit cards go up or down, or savings. There seems to be a national thing, and I just can't explain it. And looking at which sectors, I think it's all of them. It eludes me. Do we have data? Yeah, we do. And we look around at our town, and we know our town, and I still believe in it. But I can't explain why it's down 6%. Yeah.
okay, all right. Thank you.
Susan?
Thank you. Under the ARPA project tracking, it says disbursements to date is as follows as of August 31st.
Oh,
Could we get something more up to date?
we update that monthly.
Yes.
Yes.
I thought it would be monthly too.
Oh, no, we've got spending from
It's-
December 31 there.
Okay, but I'm just reading what it says here. Disbursements to date is as follows as of August 31st.
Oh, I pasted in the new table, and I did not change the word.
Okay.
I apologize.
I know that they are doing some work on the streetlights. I've seen that.
Yeah.
As I drive around town,
Yes.
which is good.
Yeah, that's current as through December 31st, yeah.
Okay, awesome.
And again, we maximized the ARPA contract, so I wish I could come up with a different word to use, so I didn't say that this is ARPA anymore, because this is all savings in the general fund. It's free from all the ARPA restrictions, but
I
that's
think we
what
should keep calling it ARPA.
yeah, we're committed to monitoring all the projects that
Right.
were approved. I know.
Secondly, the detail, the retail services, like construction, do you have any details on that? Construction is lower, pretty much everything is a little bit lower. Can you give us more detail on that?
I'm not sure what that detail would be, but I will look and see what I can do, yeah.
Second, or thirdly, or whatever, I've lost track. There are two cities I know of in Washington State that are having financial impacts, probably more, but two that I'm following. One city has actually laid people off, and their existing staff are having to take furlough days in 2025. What is different from those cities, I'm sure you know who I'm talking about, and I don't really want to say, than us? Do you know what caused those issues?
When we do budget variance explanations, sometimes it's something that changed on the actual side, but sometimes it's poor budgeting or inaccurate budgeting. So it can't always be explained in the actual world. Sometimes it was over-optimistic budgeting, I want to say. And now I don't, because what specifically the answer is, it could be a combination of both. Because I think that the single most important decision you all make, the point in time, is when you adopt the budget. That's when that gives every department the green light to go ahead and spend on the expenses, but we have to monitor our revenue every month and see if we need to course correct. So there's something, so there's some city management to it too. I don't have an easy answer. I don't.
Do you know how many other cities in Washington or even around the country are having issues?
We see some in the news, we see the ones that are requesting levy lid lifts, and that's a really big clue that they are,
Actually, I'm thinking of 3 cities now, now that I'm asking.
yeah,
One is pretty close to us.
yeah.
Uh,
Some of them have single events that happen, I don't want to call it a catastrophic event, but, for example, our city hall roof is a unique event that isn't common to other cities. Other cities have similar things. Maybe they've deferred some capital spending and it becomes a crisis. It's really tough to compare cities.
Okay. And then my last question is on the, you could go ahead. Oh, yeah, I will come up with my last question.
Oh, I have an easy one. The monthly trainings, is that something that I can come sit in on?
The monthly trending,
The monthly trainings you guys were talking about doing here?
I am having trouble hearing from these speakers. I apologize.
Also, you had mentioned earlier that you guys do a monthly financial training.
Oh, training. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Training, yes.
Yeah, sometimes the way I speak too. But, yeah, I was just curious, is that open for someone to come sit in? Is that something I can go check out?
Member cities pay $40, I think, for the lunch, and we have a speaker. I think the next one's going to be the last one was the state auditor. So, yeah, we can let you know.
Yeah, if you don't mind just adding.
'Cause you're
it to
one
the
of
email.
us.
Yes, thank you. I'll pay my own $40 then.
My question is on the utility tax rebate.
Yes.
So we were talking about perhaps getting a committee together to look at that and see if we could change that. Has your department, I know you've been understaffed, I know you're really busy. Have you looked at how we could change that to make it more intriguing to people to apply for the money?
We implemented it because this January 1st came along and the municipal code's still in place. And so we mailed out to all the previous recipients. Until the code changes, that we're doing exactly what we've done before.
Okay, so as a council, we need to get a committee together to look at this, and I would recommend we do that ASAP. I'd like to be on it.
Yeah, if you could rescind that code and do something else, we're happy to. But we have executed it. It's on the finance website, and it's all the forms are updated. The income guidelines are all updated, so we're current.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Sure.
Councilmember Hunt, I'll bring that up at our next managers meeting.
I mean, it sounds like it's something that he's suggesting the council go ahead and get a committee together. Would you support that? Your staff, would you support the committee?
The use of time that we put in doesn't seem like it's getting the results you want, and yes, of course.
Okay, thank you.
We'll follow your direction, though.
Thank you.
Right. I'll ask the last questions before we vote. So I'm sure you're aware that the president has directed most, if not all, federal loans and grant to be paused at this
Yes.
time, right? I know that we do receive some federal grants. Now, I'm hoping that this is going to be temporary. And
You're asking,
it
what are
is
we gonna do
going to
about
be
it?
very short. Now, but if this is going to be last a little bit longer, how soon we need to dip into our reserve to pay for all this?
May I share with you that I think the effective time for this instruction was 5 o'clock Eastern today.
Right.
And now, all the federal departments are figuring out what they have to evaluate and what that means downstream. I think it's going to be quite some time before we know anything, and I think we're going to get a lot of conflicting information. What I know for a fact is that I need to have my staff watch our cash flow. We need to look at what our spending is and what our cash balances are, and I think you can see that we do that normally. So if things were to be paused, normally, anything federal, if it's delayed, we know it's collectible. The question is what's not going to be, what's going to be terminated, what changes. We have several departments that are paying attention to this. We have Public Works, EJ is looking at his federal contracts, Keith Nivens, CDBG, that kind of stuff. PD, COPS grants. Law is watching what's happening with whether it's being stayed or allowed or it's being litigated. So it's going to get messy. However, for us, watch our cash flow. And we will do that. And we will try to figure out through a lot of the noise what really pertains to us. And at this moment, I don't know a thing. Just that it's something to pay attention to.
I think I heard that the pause was going to end on March 15th. The pause was going to go until March 15th.
So if that is the case, then how are we going to pay for the ongoing expenditure? With our own money?
A lot of grants are reimbursement. If that's reimbursement, then we normally use our own money. So,
So if some of the grant get terminated, then what gonna happen?
I'm not going to speculate, but we are going to really pay attention and see what we can learn. And this is a national thing. The government finance community nationwide is very focused on this, and we'll watch it. We'll pay attention. There's a lot of federal spending that is necessary, and a lot of things that we do are necessary. So we just have to figure out what the new administration and what's moving forward, what isn't, and what the rules are.
Okay, thank you. Jack?
Maybe if I could follow up on that a second. I mean, COP grants were mentioned. I'm assuming we're going to pause on hiring anybody on those COP grants until we know, because that's part of the things that are frozen right now. And it'd be nice to have a list of what federal money that we're spending our money for reimbursement is, because we may want to put those on pause also. I mean, because you talk about cash flow, and that's what it's all. I don't think we have cities have a cash flow problem unless you're in Illinois or something, but we need to be very aware of what things we may have to cut. And as Councilmember Honda brings up, other cities are making some drastic changes I haven't been following, but, we have to be ready for that.
Sure, we don't want to be too optimistic and ignore it, but we also don't want to overreact and spend a lot of
you can't
time
overreact,
and have it
but-
be for nothing. So there's some art to it, yeah.
Yeah, but there may be some federal grant money that we're expecting for human services that aren't going to show up, and we've committed. We may have to renege on some of those
Yeah.
things, or the COPS grant, or whatever it
So,
is.
if I could add just a couple of things. He's right, we don't know the latest.
Well, nobody
yet.
knows. It happened
But
today.
no one could possibly know right now. The Trump administration doesn't know right now.
Hey.
They're just trying to figure it out. So, but CDBG is mostly reimbursed stuff, so we will absolutely need to tell people, hey, you've read the news, watch out.
Yeah.
Don't spend money because you might not get it reimbursed.
Exactly.
Most of our contracts do have some language in there saying this is contingent on us getting the money. We're not going to pay for it out of our general fund. If the feds flake out, you're not going to get this money. So that is in most of our
Okay,
language for
but
CDBG.
along that line, which you bring up a good point,
Yeah.
we should at least notify people
Yes.
without the chicken little and the sky is falling, but we
I
do need to
totally
be
agree,
very
and that is
open.
EJ and Niven, and the police department's already on the COPS grant.
Yeah,
The
I'm
COPS
sure they-
grant is the only one I think that's we're a direct recipient for, and that we are planned on and we plan on using. So we definitely need to pause that until we know if we're getting that money or not. But the other ones are either project-based or they're pass-throughs to other agencies. So we do need to be good.
Yeah.
We need to warn people, for sure.
Susan?
I would think that we need to be, we always need to be very cautious of how we're spending taxpayers' money. And I think now we have to be even more cautious. But how is what the federal government did today, how will that impact Sound Transit? I know that they get a lot of their funding from the federal government. Do we, and of course, we don't know anything. I mean, it just happened today, but maybe that's something in the next few weeks you could check with Sound Transit if they don't put anything out publicly. Because, their projects impact our city very much, extremely. I mean, they've got 3 projects in our city.
Yeah, they have a new CFO that I haven't met. And I'm going to say, I don't know.
Well, nobody knows, but I think we need
Yes.
to be talking to Sound
Yeah,
Transit.
and the mayor and our city administrator are aware. We had a conversation today, just hours after the announcement, so we're aware, we're monitoring, and we're gonna have to watch to find out what information is credible.
I mean, I really do not want them to start on the maintenance and operations yard and tear Christian Faith Center down and have an empty, ugly lot there if they are not going to get the funding that they anticipated. Thank you.
Okay, I think I'm ready for the motion.
I move to forward the November 2024 monthly financial report to the February 4th, 2025 consent agenda for approval.
I'll second that.
We have a motion, a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. This matter passed 3-0. Thank you. That concludes our meeting for today. Our future meeting going to be on February 25th at 5 p.m. in this room. Thank you, council members, and thank you, staff, for being here today. This meeting now is ended.